So, welcome to Start with Collaboration with the Queen of Collaboration, my special guest, Lois Sonstegard. Her upcoming book is Start with Collaboration. And today we're going to take a deep dive into what is the blueprint for collaboration. How can you set yourself up for success with collaboration? How can you do this within your company or with other companies? So today we're going to be covering the blueprint for collaboration. This is going to be a fantastic episode. So Lois, perhaps you would just remind the audience who you are and why we are doing this process of recording these podcast interviews as you are creating your wonderful new book, Start with Collaboration.
Sure. I'm a business strategist and executive coach. And really, what I'm looking at is how do we grow our businesses, especially during a time where we have tremendous economic uncertainty and geopolitical uncertainty that we didn't even plan on when we began this process. But it doesn't matter. Life is full of uncertainty. And whether it's this today and something else tomorrow, there is uncertainty. And so we need to know how to plan for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. And collaboration could be the superpower that you are missing in your business, within your company. Who knows, within your relationships and at church or other nonprofit groups as well. Collaboration, I've learned from Lois, is a superpower, but one that you require some new skills, techniques, and structure to implement. And this is part of the series of creating Lois's new book, Start with Collaboration. And we would love to hear from you. Love to hear your stories and your feedback. So go to startwithcollaboration.com. You can take advantage of a quiz there or connect with us on LinkedIn at Start with Collaboration. So let's get right into it. Can you give us a bit of an overview, and then we'll go deeper over the podcast. Can you give us an overview of what the blueprint for successful collaboration looks like?
I sure will. So I call it the Start with Collaboration way because it's an approach. It's a process, a system that will really allow you to put this into practice. So here are some basics that are really essential. Core values. What are they? We're going to talk a little bit about each of these today. So we'll fill them in. What are your organizational strengths and the strengths of the people that you will be collaborating with? And then what about the financial health of you and the people you'll be collaborating with? What resources do you have? What resources do they have? What are their networks? What are your networks? And then looking at what kind of opportunities you have together, developing a plan, executing on it, and then measuring for results. So why is this so important? Because Aurora, I think that so much of the time when we look at collaboration, partnerships, and all of that, we look at, is there a fit in terms of financials, right? Or management. And so we hyper focus there, but what we tend to ignore is that our businesses are really living organisms. They're constantly evolving. And the partners, the people who are a part of this, are those people who create the living organism that keeps changing. So it's like marriage. After 20 years, you're probably not the same two people you were when you first married, right? Business
Absolutely.
is exactly the same way. So you need a process, a system that will allow you to keep growing and evolving as you collaborate, because that's where your strength will come from.
Absolutely. Well, that was a lot, and we're going to be taking a deeper dive so people can follow along and implement this. So, where do we start?
Start with an assessment. You want to know, first of all, are people willing to be win-win? A lot of people are win-lose. And if you have, think of it as a team. If you have one sour apple on a team, it really ruins a team. So when you're collaborating and working together with people, you want people who have the same values as you, the same perspective, that you want people who really want you to win as well as them. And then you want to be able to take time to reflect for yourself in the past with partnerships you've had and relationships you've had. Which ones worked? Which ones failed? Because boy, we have a list, don't we? And
Absolutely.
and when you take a look at that, that helps you know how do you sort partners. And the assessment will also help you with the questions that it asks in that sorting process. Here's why it's important. When you surround yourself with good people, you become better. Tony Robbins talks a lot about modeling yourself after the people you want to become. So you're only as good as the people around you. And we want everybody to grow exponentially. So surround yourself with people that are better or at least as good as you.
Absolutely. That's very key. So, what are the different models for collaboration? Can you talk a little bit about the models that may be more applicable for intra company, within a company collaboration, or the models that might be more appropriate or helpful between companies or inter company collaboration?
Sure. So within companies, we tend to see things like teams. We hear a lot about teams. And one of the issues with teams, actually, and lack of collaboration amongst teams, is people spend a lot of time looking for information and knowledge that they shouldn't have to look for. And so research is showing that of Fortune 500 companies, roughly $31.5 billion a year is lost by failing to share important knowledge. So teams is one way of doing it. Support groups, mentor groups, peer coaching groups, accountability groups, brainstorming groups, education groups. Those are all things we tend to see fairly frequently within organizations. And we use them to sometimes get us across organizations, departments, so that we're working cross department, across silos in order to break those down a bit.
Mm. And which of these models would use masterminding? Would they all use some form of masterminding as part of the collaborative model?
So within companies, you could use masterminding, especially when it comes to education, accountability, peer coaching. We're seeing there's a wonderful group out of Canada right now that's developed a brilliant program on peer coaching within organizations. And so as you develop a large company and peer coaching groups within it, those can form their mastermind groups. That would be powerful.
Can you share what the value of masterminding is and what problems mastermind groups can solve? And what have you seen? What kind of success have you seen with your own mastermind groups that you lead or that you've participated in?
Sure. Before I do that, let me talk a little bit about collaboration across companies, because what I just outlined was collaboration within companies. But we have a lot of collaboration that goes outside of companies. We see that with not-for-profit organizations. So we see it with food shortages, eradicating food shortages, clean water groups. I worked with a group called Samaritan's Purse and our Rotary group and 3 church groups and a hospital in Pakistan to bring specialty services to a very remote hospital in Pakistan. That would be a collaborative effort. We also see it in terms of creating incubators, accelerators. We'll talk more about that next week. We see it in associations. We see associations coming together to sometimes mastermind and work together. Alliances would be another. One of the places that I saw where alliances worked really well, we see it in public-private sector a lot, Aurora. So NGOs, UN, UNICEF, government, private. But very specifically in Minneapolis, back in 2007, at 6 p.m., August 1st, we had a bridge during rush hour on one of our major highways collapse.
Hmm.
And it took with it 111 vehicles, 13 people died, 145 people were injured. Here's what's interesting. I took the City Council of Minneapolis to Japan shortly after that incident. And the Japanese counterparts in the city government said, how did you manage during rush hour when the freeway was full of cars, to only have 13 people die. And this
Mm.
is what they said. They had created this system, this alliance with all these different groups, Red Cross, emergency services, public works, EMT, the list went on, huge group of resources. And they had practiced for some time what they would do in case of an emergency. And so when this event happened, within 15 minutes was their goal, people would be in their stations and ready to do what they were supposed to do. And they also knew who on each side of them was supposed to be there and what their responsibilities were. So when they didn't show up, somebody else then took over their responsibility. That's an example of an alliance that's gone really, really well.
Oh, I got chills. What a fantastic example of collaboration, but also the value of practice. Because we don't rise to the challenge, we fall to the level of our skill, of our practice, what we've practiced. The fact that they knew who was supposed to be beside them and could even fill in. They had a plan A and a plan B and a plan C. That is pretty amazing that only 13 people died when a bridge collapsed in rush hour in
It,
Minneapolis. Wow.
it is really quite amazing because the cars plunged into the river, Mississippi River, and that's not a small river.
That's not a good place to be. You could die of hypothermia quite quickly or drown. Did the do the Japanese have any different models of collaboration? You were sharing about your trip to Japan.
Well, the Japanese collaborate in a lot of interesting ways. Part of it is, again, because they are more willing to bring government and private sectors together to look at solutions. They do some very interesting things. Another time I took a group to Japan and we were looking at what do we do with elder care. And one of the issues was, how do you keep people in the homes and still have them doing their physical therapy at the rate that they're supposed to do? Here was a novel approach. They knew that if you just put a person into a home to do physical therapy, if they were busy, they might shortcut the physical therapy that day. And so, how do you prevent it? So, they worked with home agencies, they worked with the government agencies. Then they worked with the travel because they took vans to these homes and had lay people that they trained through music to do physical therapy. So each song was a certain exercise. They taught the song to the patient, they taught the song to the provider. So you couldn't shortcut now because both people knew the song.
Ah, that's really great. Well, both of these examples are really showcasing the value, the outcome can be almost miraculous, and yet some thought and structure has to go into creating an effective collaboration. You had to solve the problem for the bridge collapse, you had to solve a different kind of problem for shortcutting the physiotherapy. And so that's what we're talking about today. What is the blueprint for successful collaboration? So let's take a deeper dive into that. Is there more that you'd like to say about the models of collaboration before we go on to the next question?
Sure, we have also, we hear a lot about joint ventures. So we see a lot about that. We see value chain partnerships. And then mastermind groups like Vistich, or we have marketing mastermind groups. My goodness, those have grown fast and furious since people have been home with since COVID. And so those are all powerful ways in which we can come together to solve our individual problems.
Yeah, I've hosted a number of mastermind groups and participated in mastermind groups, and I love masterminding. I find that two heads are better than one, and three heads are even better. And if you can get, a number of people who are intent upon the same goal together in a room, it is amazing the breakthroughs that can happen. But what's your experience with the value of masterminds?
The value of masterminds is huge in terms of results. So you can see that um, productivity goes up. So for example, you'll see customer ratings actually goes up because people become more productive, they get more ideas, they bring more ideas back to their own company. So satisfaction goes up amongst those who collaborate by 41%. Quality actually improves by 34%. Product development improves by 30%. Sales increases by about 27%. We see cash flow rate, the doubling. We see that the industry average profitability amongst those who mastermind can triple.
Wow.
And I mean, it is quite amazing. And then we see increase in the valuation of a firm relative to their competitors. So particularly if you're looking to selling a business, that's huge. Employee attraction and retention increases. There's 5 times more likelihood that there will be an increase in employment, for example, or employees being attracted to your business. Twice as likely to outgrow your competition. And you are 73%, you do 73% better work, 60% more innovative, 56% more satisfied amongst your employees and the people within the work. So think about burnout. If just collaborating makes you more satisfied, more happy, that's pretty good.
Wow. And so you really can't afford not to mastermind with all of those results. And what is the source of that data, or do you have multiple sources?
There are multiple sources. So one source is the Deloitte data that comes out of Australia. Another is from Vern Harnish in his work with Scaling Up. And then there's another from a potpourri of different researchers. Harvard Business Review did a piece on alliances and what happens when we mastermind.
So masterminding is one component of collaboration. It's not the whole thing, but wow, those are some pretty incredible results. So back to collaboration, what do you recommend when people are forming a group to collaborate? How should they go about thinking about that and forming their group? They might call it a mastermind group, they might call it a collaboration group, they might have some other name for it, but where should they start?
I think the first place and the most important place to start is with your values. Where are the values? Do you have a group of people that you can go to that are like you in terms of values? And by that, I mean, it's not people who are in the same industry or think just like you. By core values, I'm thinking about what's the spirit of generosity? What's the spirit about allowing you to win as well as me to win? So do you have a network like that that you can draw from? What kind of resources do they bring to the table? What do you bring to the table? What resources are missing? What knowledge, skill sets do people bring? How about technology? I think another thing to take a look at is what's happening with competition in your marketplace. Who do you need to be a part of to strengthen your competitive position? And I think in the coming days, this is going to be a very important aspect for us to take a look at, because we do know that the bigger companies get bigger, they get stronger. So those that are in the middle do get squeezed. And how do you compete? You can only compete if you get stronger and you have a group that you're a part of that strengthens your position together. Then I think you have incredible competitiveness, even when you're working against big giants.
I love that you're bringing in this up. When I got my when I took my MBA, one of the processes that we did was the SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So, what you're bringing to mind is that people can obviously look at their own strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, but some of the challenges, some of the weaknesses, some of the opportunities or threats or strengths can be ameliorated through collaboration. You don't have to necessarily have that strength yourself. Perhaps you could collaborate with a company that has that strength. Or if you see a threat, well, how could collaboration reduce that threat? How can you
Exactly.
increase the opportunities? And your every person, every company has certain weaknesses. Maybe you don't need to shore up your own weaknesses. Maybe through collaboration you can bring your strengths to the table, and another company may have strengths where you have weaknesses. Okay, so this is so practical.
And I think too, along with what you're saying, Aurora, is that you want to look at how strong you are as an organization, how strong the people are that you're partnering with. What's their leadership team like? And I would say more important than all the different details, do they have all the processes, procedures, all, the financials, all of that, is that perfect? I would worry less about that than I do about the leadership team,
Mm-hmm.
because organizational things can be developed if people have the mindset to grow. Leadership team is a mindset attitude that you bring to the collaborative process that is harder to develop quickly. And so if you have those pieces in place, it really helps.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't
What
have
you're
to be perfect. You
it,
you helped you basically help each other become better.
Yeah, but value alignment is so key because you can learn new skills, you can expand your business, but you want to make sure that you're rowing in the same direction, so to speak. So, what are some tips that you would have for people to put their own collaboration group together, and how could they start initially once they have formed the group? Maybe they've got, I don't know, eight people or eight companies. What do they do next?
I would start with looking at core values. And why is that? There's some wonderful work that comes out of what Jim Collins and Jerry Porras has written in Built to Last. And they looked at organizations for 6 years, and what they found was the organizations that survived through recessions and depressions were those that had defined their core values.
Mm,
So if you really are going to move in a competitive way, strengthen yourself, having those core values in alignment, I think is really important. So I think one of the first places you begin is, where are we aligned? Where
yeah.
are we aligned in terms of our values, right? And then what's our purpose? Why do
Hmm.
we exist as a business?
Hmm.
And then what's the speed at which you really want to grow? Different businesses choose differently depending upon the leadership goals. Sometimes it's shareholders, if there are shareholders involved. Rate of growth, I think, it has a greater impact on your ability to collaborate effectively, having a similar desired rate of growth than being in a similar industry.
Hmm.
It's a mindset. When you're growing at a certain rate, a very rapid rate, for example, that's a different mindset. And some of the things you need in place are different from somebody who is just happy to move along, grow at, let's say, 20% per year.
Hmm. So
You,
one of the things you shared with me offline is that one of the keys is to identify one, two, or three goals. And then, have the collaborative group or the masterminding group, if it's a masterminding group, be aligned on what those goals are. Certainly growth could be one of the potential goals, but I really love that clarity. What is our objective? Our objective is, if the bridge should collapse, we're there and as few people as possible die. That's a clear goal. It doesn't always have to be business growth goal. Or our goal is that people who are recovering at home always get their physiotherapy, and that's not skipped. That could be another goal. There could be more than one goal, but I think people can make a mistake if they have 49 goals. So just a couple of goals. Yes, go ahead.
well, I think what's important about that is if we come together just to be together, to be in relationship, to share, to brainstorm, to have a board of advisors, that is a typical way in which masterminds have come together. They don't, however, generally come together to solve a challenge together. And what Harvard Business Review's article on the competitive advantage talks about is that masterminds and competitive groups survive and those partnerships last when you come together to work on a challenge together, because then you have a real reason. You have a way to go back and talk to your people about why are you spending all this time doing what you're doing, and people then begin to see the value of what it is that you're doing.
I really love this distinction. So, what I'm hearing you say, correct me if I've got this wrong, but what I'm hearing you say is masterminding is great, great way to get more ideas, great way to support other people and other brainstorm and to get energized about what you're doing. But collaboration takes it another huge step forward because together we are focused on the same goal.
Absolutely. And then once you start to look at those same goals, it's really dreaming about where are the opportunities? What opportunities do we want to go after? If we can accomplish them, where will that take us? Right? And I think once a mastermind group that's in collaboration is let loose on that, the rate of growth, that what their ability to accomplish things and produce results is limitless.
I love that enthusiasm. That's why you're the queen of collaboration. It is limitless.
It is
Uh,
limitless. But what you need to do is look at those opportunities and then as a group agree on a list of 1 to 3. You can't do them all. So what are your
exactly.
priorities?
Exactly right. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanics that you would recommend for people who are listening to this or reading this and considering starting a group to collaborate? Like when, where, who, how? Just some mechanical suggestions would be appreciated.
So when you need to have some regular meetings, and you need to identify them up front and have people committed to them. You need to have leadership involved, and you need to have leadership also several layers down in the organization so that people really know what it is that you're doing. And one of the things that Harvard found in their research on collaboration was that when you actually brought that information into the organization, people found side projects, side things that they could collaborate on that that expanded their ability. So people 2, 3 layers down can go, wow, if you're doing that, I can work with that company in this way also, and we'll have that much more to offer that we can do. So it empowers many people at different levels of the organization. I think also as you do that, one of the things you want to take a look at is what are the resources that you have
Hmm.
individually as a organization, and then what do you have as a group?
Hmm.
And then if you know what it is that you want to achieve, right? You know where you want to go, where you see the opportunities, where you're dreaming to go. Well, what resources do you need?
I've always been blown away every time I've led a mastermind group. And well, I assume people often like to complain about what they don't have and how things are not going as well as they could. But when I invite people to ask for one thing that they need that would make a difference, and instead of complaining about an, a broad, vague problem in their business, instead they say, oh, I would really like an introduction to this company or this person, or it would really make a difference to me if this. I've been amazed. Even a relatively small group of, a few dozen people, somebody has got a way to connect them with that person they're looking for, or somebody has got, I don't know, a truck to loan them for moving this weekend, or somebody has got that resource. So when we can ask for the resources that we need, it is amazing when we are in a collaborative energy of a group, how that resource can be provided with ease and grace from somebody else.
So I want to go back to what you said, because absolutely. So what you've got is somebody leading the group, allowing the discussion, right? So people can share, have their asks shared. And so when you're doing this, a group, and you're forming one yourselves, that's one of the things you want to look at. Who can spearhead this? Bring the people together, meet on a regular basis, and then identify the resources that you need. Look at what's missing, and then how do you want to go about filling the gap?
Very good. And what about framing expectations so that people know what to expect? Should you make a commitment for a certain number of months or a certain something? And what kind of expectations need to be set within an organization, for example? I find it's always good to set expectations at the front, both for what positive outcomes might happen, but also sometimes for what bumps to expect along the way.
Right. Oh, I think there's a lot of things. So, one of the things that's going to happen is you're sharing ideas, you're looking at those opportunities, and you're looking at growth. And that information that you're beginning to share and talk about needs to be taken back into the organization, individual organizations, because it's going to impact several layers down. People need to know what it is that you're about. Why are those processes and procedures suddenly becoming so important? Why is how we're handling that customer so important right now, right? And
Mm-hmm.
those are questions people have. Why are we changing the way we're doing our warehousing? And so you've got to take those things down into your organization. And as you do, there's often pushback. People have
Mm-hmm.
questioned why? What's the value of this? How is it going to impact me? How will you support me? What does that mean in terms of demands that will be placed on me, my customers? How will it shift what I do with sales? So there are a lot of questions that get raised. So one of the expectation is that you have to set is when you meet together in a collaborative mastermind, you're going to impact the individual organization. And
Mm-hmm.
so prepare the organization for that.
Mm-hmm. And so that they also understand why
So they understand why.
and the
Yep.
value.
And then you need a really effective communication process. When you're beginning to collaborate amongst other organization, communication needs to be thought through. We have enough trouble communicating within our own systems, much less expanding that out to the horizon. So think of communication going off to the side as well as down deep within the organization. You've got it going in different directions,
Mm-hmm.
and you need a process for that. So you don't forget people. You forget people, you lose them.
So you should have a process and a checklist and a structure that you repeat each week or however often that you are meeting so that it's not ad hoc, like you said, that you
Exactly.
could miss people. And what about the leadership of the person who's holding the space for collaboration? Should that automatically be the person with the most seniority, or would you look for certain specific traits of mindset or certain other capacities? What do you recommend there?
I think it helps to have somebody with experience and an incredible ability to listen.
Mm-hmm.
Opportunities are all about listening and seeing with peripheral vision. And that sometimes takes an unusual person to be able to do that, but it's a willingness to take the time to do it. Somebody who's reflective and who is willing to dot the I's and cross the T's. You've got to have those processes. You've got to have reporting. So, what's working? Making sure that the organizations that are a part of the mastermind have they talked with people? These are the processes that are really essential right now for us to be able to accomplish our goal that we've set. What are they doing in their individual organizations? Reporting back. How are they managing it? Who's accountable for that? Who within the mastermind is accountable for each of these different pieces, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's learning. So there may be learning skill sets, technology, different pieces that are important, and identifying them. So the leader of the group has to be willing to say, will you please do that? Because the leader can't do everything. They shouldn't do
Mm-hmm.
everything. It should
Mm-hmm.
be a collaborative effort.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly right. And some of the groups that are the most successful, these aren't collaborative groups, but just to give some examples, like AA has a very specific framework for each meeting. And their framework plus their book, I suppose, of philosophy, so to speak, um, enables many different people to lead AA meetings successfully. Or the Rotary Club. I've participated in Rotary Club meetings. Again, there is a structure and a framework. And once people have that, uh, more than one person can effectively lead a Rotary Club meeting. Or my church group, we have a specific process, and it's comforting actually to know what is the routine and the structure and the framework. So the framework for collaboration is so important.
It is important, and that leader is also, that's a commitment that the leader must make to really taking that time to being there for each of the members,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Is there anything else you want to add about the mechanics?
Those are the main ones. Then action steps, I guess, are the next part that are really important. You need to be able to accomplish something. It's no good to meet and to talk and not accomplish something. People want results, and the rate at which people want results needs to be defined, because that will set forth then the accountabilities and what each group will do and how they report back. Reporting back is very important. And I think on a minimum, Aurora, it needs to be done on a quarterly basis. A very, very rapidly growing group or one that's in a very competitive environment may need to touch base more frequently.
Absolutely. I could see that getting going, it could be good to do it every week, even. You know, that would, I would imagine once a quarter would be more of a maintenance kind of a thing. Or perhaps if people are getting together just for an hour a week, every week or every other week, they could get a lot achieved. Whereas if they're meeting once a quarter, probably it's got to be more than an hour. Would you say?
Well, when we talk about this a little bit more in terms of how we work with people, we'll talk about this next week. Because when we work with people, yes, we will then work with each individual organization on a weekly basis to make sure the pieces are in place so that they can contribute to their absolute best.
Okay, so the ongoing focus is actually not just talk about it, but do something. So identify action steps and then take those actions and then report back on the execution. And how can people know
Absolutely.
if their collaboration has been worthwhile?
I think there's nothing more important than measuring. Measure, measure, measure. You want to know that you've made a difference, right? And so check in with people. How is it working with people? You can do surveys. There's a lot of different surveys that are already made that you can use that will help you. Take a look at what's happened with your market presence. Are you more competitive? Do you have more market share? So take a look at what you've been able to accomplish by working together from that perspective. Do you see growth within the organization? And by growth, the easiest way is to look at it in terms of customers. Have you grown your customer base? What's happened in terms of customer satisfaction? How about user satisfaction? Financials, have you increased your profit? How about your revenue? Cash flow. Cash flow is the oxygen of every company.
Yeah,
So, what's happened to cash?
yeah.
What's the rate of growth?
And it
And
could be very valuable to select one or maybe two metrics that you're especially going to focus on so that there's a consistency meeting to meeting. Oh, we're tracking and measuring, I don't know, the rate of growth and the number of customers we have or whatever two are, and then they could be sharing dozens of different metrics from time to time, but it would be a nice continuity in my view anyway to have maybe two metrics that they are collaborating on clearly? I don't know how you would actually have a metric. You have a healthcare background. Maybe you could tell me. So the collaboration that resulted in only 13 fatalities when the bridge collapsed in rush hour and 111 cars plunged into the river. What metric might they use to measure the effectiveness of their collaboration? Because obviously they're not going to collapse a bridge and go, well, only 29 people died. Let's see if we can improve that to 13.
Okay, so I think it starts with what is it that what's your goal? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Because I think your measure is going to change based on that. So with this situation with the collapse of the bridge, one of their metrics was everybody in their place, what percentage of people were in their place within 15 minutes of the collapse. That was one of their criteria. And when somebody wasn't in their place, was somebody next to them knowledgeable about what needed to be done so they could take over until that person arrived? Two metrics, very simple, right? And but if each one was doing what they were supposed to be doing, you had people who were extricating people from the river. You had all these different groups already identified. You didn't need to measure those. You just need to measure the percentage of people that actually showed up on time and were able to do what were supposed to do.
That's so clear. Just two metrics. Very
Just
easy to
two.
measure. I love that because then they can go, okay, we can very clearly see if we're on target and how we are improving. That's awesome.
It's your goal that's going to identify your measure. And, there are people, Aurora, who say that you should measure as often as daily.
Hmm.
Some people say at least once a week, 3 times a week. And the reporting on where you're at with the measurement can be as short as 5 minutes.
Mm.
So, you know what? So like with the Minneapolis situation, yep, we did a test and 85% of our people showed up in 15 minutes this week. Okay, so our goal for next week is let's compare next week to this last week and see if we improved, right? So
Yeah.
you can make those kinds of metrics very easily.
And the best thing is, can you think of a way to make the thing that you're measuring in advance of what really matters, not a trailing metric? So profitability is a trailing metric. So can
Sure.
you make a metric that's earlier? So to
So
just
yeah.
consider with the example with the bridge, what's the opposite of trailing? Advanced metric or something, preceding metric. So for
Well,
example, when I'm writing books, my metric is how many hours do I show up and how many words did I get written? That's a metric that happens before the number of books that get published, for a simple example.
so I did a dry run. We did X dry runs this month or this quarter. And so that's one way you could do it. In marketing, it can be as simple as, or I think in marketing, it can be like how many leads. But I think in terms of when you're looking at opportunities and trying to really do something together, it could be more, do I have the right network? Did I build the right network? Did I talk to that one person that we agreed to? Did each of us contact that one person? You can sign off on that on a weekly basis. I did, I didn't. Doesn't take more
Exactly.
than 5 minutes.
Doesn't take more than 5 minutes, but as you mentioned earlier, can have phenomenal results. So, what action steps can people take right now if they are thinking of collaborating, or perhaps they would like to start their own collaboration within their company or within other companies? What do you suggest?
I begin with your wish list. Dream. I think dreaming is huge. It's so interesting because I spoke with a gentleman this last week who wrote a book called Dream Machine. We'll talk a little bit more about that with the books for recommending this week. But what he does is he brings organizations together and has them dream
Mm.
and dream about what they want to do for their vacation, dream about what they want to do with their family, with their spouse, with exercise, with health, finances, their job, their career. And I said, but how does that impact your productivity? He said, actually, it put them into the third most productive group in their large organization, very large organization, because people had to be productive in order to accomplish their dreams.
Well, there's also the power of manifestation. Like if you visualize it, you tend to get it. Whereas if you don't, you miss every target that you don't have. So dreams, and we would love to hear from you on social media. So connect at startwithcollaboration.com or on LinkedIn. You can connect Start With Collaboration or Lois Sonstegard or Aurora Winter. Let us know what your wish list is for collaboration. Let us know your dreams. We would love to hear from you. And if we use anything that you have shared in Lois's new book, Start With Collaboration, you will get a free copy of her book. So there.
There you go. And I think, you know what else with that is just taking a look at your own inventory. What do I have to bring? What do I need? How, do I have the time to do this? And how can I begin to go about creating this? So if you just start asking those questions, you begin the process.
Exactly. And also consider, do you want the effort of launching this all by yourself and coming up with a framework, or do you want to work with the queen of collaboration who already knows how to do this? But more on that next week. So it's story time. Do you have a story for us today?
Oh, I have a delightful story. So, you know what? We have an idea, right? A lot of times, like this, our collaborative masterminds. That's an idea. So then we tell people about our idea using the language that we have. But what we don't always know is, what does that mean to the people who are listening to us? Do they really understand what it is that I'm saying? Will they be able to go ahead and execute on this based on what it is that we've said? And sometimes what we discover is it doesn't happen the way we intended. And it's not because people didn't want it to happen. It isn't that they're being intentional about not being helpful. It just happens because information and communication is not clear. So what happened to me as a child growing up in Japan is we would have sometimes experts from the United States that would come and speak to our church leadership about various different topics. And it was largely to inspire people and to really get people to come together and to work together. So we had this one situation where we had an expert come, and he spoke through a translator, as most people would need to do. And for whatever reason, the translator and the speaker must not have talked about the intended outcome before the speech began.
Oh, no.
So I was about 10 or 12 and sitting in the audience and not really particularly engaged in what was going on until it started. And the speaker started with, "Today I'm going to talk about the 4 ships." And I heard the translator say, 4 different ships. One is big and powerful. Another was a group of ships like a regatta. And so it went on. Now the speaker was talking about the 4 ships: fellowship, relationship, stewardship, discipleship. I was captivated. I couldn't wait to see how this talk would end and if those ships would ever meet.
Oh.
So communication clarity is often more difficult than we think. And I think today it's even more so because of all the jargon and abbreviations we use. And so
I love that story, the 4 ships. Oh, that is great. Yes, you have to check in that message sent is message received. Oh my goodness. That got your attention at least.
it got my attention. And when you speak and it's memorable for a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old, you know that was quite the speech.
Did the speaker ever understand that the translation had completely missed the mark?
No, but he was fortunate that the translator had a handle on the topic. And so when about 2/3, 3/4 of the way into the speech, you could see the translator's face. So, it's like the light bulbs went off. And he started speaking more than was the translation was taking much longer than the person who was speaking. So he was filling in the pieces.
He had to backtrack and bring his story about the ships around. Oh my
It
gosh.
still was a colorful talk, but
Yes, so communication, very key, especially if you're collaborating. Oh my gosh. So you have a book recommendation for us today?
I do. I have two of them. One is Dan Espegard's The Dream Machine. And in here, he really goes and lays out for you all the different, how he goes about working with people to accomplish their dreams. And really, what we're trying to do with our collaborative masterminds is to have businesses' dreams come true. So it might be a fun way for you to think about how you're going to grow your business. And then on a practical note is Gino Wickman's book on traction. It is very pragmatic, very practical. He has worked with businesses all over the world on helping them grow. He has processes and systems that are, I think, really very important and very good to use. So a great resource.
Oh, you're such a bookworm, just like me. You always get double what you ask for. You get two book recommendations this week, not just one. So again, my guest today is Lois Sonstegard. Her upcoming book is Start with Collaboration. Please connect with us on social media. We would love to hear from you. We'd love to hear your wish list. What do you wish for? And how are things going with collaboration? We'd love to hear what's up with you. And we'd love to just hear your stories of successful collaborations or unsuccessful collaborations. You can connect with Lois on LinkedIn as well at Start with Collaboration or Lois Sonstegard. And you can connect with me, Aurora Winter, on LinkedIn at Aurora Winter. And I am the creator of the Spoken Author Method and the founder of Same Page Publishing. You're seeing a little taste of the Spoken Author Method as we collaborate, creating Lois's book, Start with Collaboration. And again, Lois Sonstegard, she's going to have a little bit more content for us here in a moment, but she is the queen of collaboration. I really adore and love and cherish this woman. Her philosophy, her life viewpoint is so giving and so caring. So if you missed any of the other podcast episodes, go back and listen. You'll learn a lot about how you can start collaborating right now. And this could be the secret sauce that you are really looking for. So as we bring this show to a close, first I want to check in if there was anything important that you didn't get a chance to say before we go on to the quote of the day.
Oh, I think we've covered a lot, and we have more we can cover next week. But along with what you were saying about collaboration, I think wisdom really comes from collaboration. And that is, I have a proverb for today, and so that kind of fits in with the proverb. And it is, the beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom, and whatever you get insight and understanding. So, a lot of times we gather up wisdom, but we don't bother to try to really understand it and internalize it. So I think one of the beautiful parts of our collaborative process, Aurora, is we talk about things ahead of time. We make notes. We do all sorts of things in the process, and you guide, you lead, you direct in many ways as we create that this book. And it is a process of my gaining further understanding and insight, but we all need it. No matter what project we're on, we have to put more understanding and insight into what it is that we're doing, or all we have is vaporous wisdom that nobody cares about.
Oh, so well put. Yes, and we can all get better, right? And we don't get better alone. We usually just double down on what we're already good at when we work alone, and our blind spots remain blind spots. Collaboration is the key, and it's such a joy to collaborate with you on your book. So many people have been asking exactly how do our collaborators work? How do we join? What's up with that? Tell us more. And next week, we will be telling you more about how the queen of collaboration person collaborates herself and tell you all the details of that. So be sure to tune in next week and learn about how our collaborators work. So again, I'm Aurora Winter, and my guest today has been the wonderful, the amazing Lois Sonstegard, the author of the upcoming book, Start with Collaboration, or if you're listening to this in 2022, you can get her book already, Start with Collaboration. That's a wrap for now. We look forward to being of service with you again next week.
Thanks so much, Aurora.
You're welcome.